Attention, please. The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go. The Basham.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
Turns out there is a chance that trying to violently overthrow our democracy might be illegal. To paraphrase an idiot and his bloodthirsty mob, lock him up.
I'm back, bitches!
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year, the Excellence in the Arts Awards, and is one of the highest Arbitron, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
Raise a little hell, raise a little hell.
I know words, I have the best words.
I love the poorly educated.
Right under the toilet.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. The website is DougBasham.com. Last name spelled B as in belligerent, ASHAM as in malfeasance, mega. DougBasham.com. My email, Doug@DougBasham.com. My website will give you all the links to everything associated with this show, in particular, links to all my social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok, on 4 of which we both broadcast this show live and archive the shows. 2 things I'd like you to do on my website. First, click on the YouTube link. Once there, click on the link that says live, whereupon you can either watch the show live or view the archive shows. But most importantly, do us a favor and click on the subscribe link. Second, also on my website, click on the TikTok link. Once there, do us another favor and click on the follow link. Just do it.
Do it. Get satisfied. Whatever it is. Do it. Get satisfied. Whatever it is.
221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you'd like to talk on the radio soon, as in our next half hour, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in save our democracy, our ultimate goal in each and every show we do, lock him up. I want to start today with an update on a story I have been following very closely since the January 6th attempted coup and insurrection, and one that has become very near and dear to my heart. Namely, the slandering, the defamation, and the besmirching of 2 patriotic and dedicated poll workers in Georgia who volunteered to do so in the middle of a deadly pandemic, just to ensure their fellow Americans' votes would be duly counted. I'm referring, of course, to Ms. Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. These are the 2 ladies who were accused of rigging the Georgia election against the Orange Gruppenführer, Donald Trump. And I did an extensive bit on this story the first week I was back on the air, and I told you, among other things, of how they were forced to move because of the vile, repulsive racial slurs and death threats they were forced to endure at the hands of Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base. They even had MAGA morons showing up at their front door in the middle of the night. I told you how they were pressured by Trump acolytes, including Kanye West's former publicist, Trevion Kuti, to actually admit that they had committed voter fraud, and they were threatened with imprisonment if they didn't. Ironically, on the day I did that bit on this mother and daughter, later that very same day, the Orange Canker was indicted in Georgia on RICO mob boss charges. The next day, after I had had a chance to look over the indictment, I told you it warmed my heart to see Ruby Freeman's name mentioned in that indictment 37 times. Oh, and Trevion Kanye Cootie, she was one of the racketeers who was indicted. I told you how Freeman and Moss, understandably and rightfully, sued the far right-wing conspiracy website, The Gateway Pundit. They did so back in December of 2021. I still haven't been able to get an update on where that case is presently, but they've already settled out of court with the right-wing propaganda hate media entity OANN, whom they also sued, which then forced the inherently dishonest propaganda network to run this retraction, I should say, on its network.
We now provide you with this updated report from Georgia officials. Take a listen.
Georgia officials have concluded that there was no widespread voter fraud by election workers who counted ballots at the State Farm Arena in November 2020. The results of this investigation indicate that Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Shea Moss did not engage in ballot fraud or criminal misconduct while working at State Farm Arena on election night. A legal matter with this network and the two election workers has been resolved to the mutual satisfaction of the parties through a fair and reasonable settlement.
Wow. The translation of which is, we lied and settled this case because we knew we'd lose even bigger in court. I told you how these two women were actually subjected to a years-long investigation by the Georgia State Election Board, all to placate the wretched Trump liar. Now, of course, they were eventually cleared of any wrongdoing, but not until a couple months ago in June, for something for which they were falsely accused almost 2.5 years ago in January of 2021. And even after they settled with OANN and OANN paid, they continued to be investigated. Just shameful. And of course, the final report truthfully said, quote, all allegations made against Ruby Freeman and Shea Moss were unsubstantiated and found to have no merit, end quote. I then brought up the story wherein Rudy Giuliani admitted that he had lied about Freeman and Moss. Prior to that admission, Rudy had called Miss Freeman and her daughter, quote, ballot-stuffing criminal conspirators, end quote. Here's what else the guy formerly known as America's mayor, now America's betrayer, which, by the way, is a mandatory prerequisite for being included in the Orange Traitors Inner Circle. This is what he had to say.
Look at that woman. Look at her taking those ballots out. Look at them scurrying around with the ballots. Nobody in the room, hiding around. They look like this. They look like they're passing out dope. Tape earlier in the day of Ruby Freeman and Shea Freeman Moss and one other gentleman, quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor, they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity.
And for you Trumpers, surreptitiously means in secret or something being done to avoid being noticed. You're welcome. Quick shout out to my man, the one and only Christopher Wynn, who I see is over there on what is that? That's YouTube. Wasn't sure which one I had brought up. Anyhow, that said, of course, none of what you just heard Rudy say was true. Well, yesterday, Ruby Freeman and Shea Moss were victorious once again, and today is a great day for some serious schadenfreude, as Giuliani lost the defamation lawsuit brought against him by that mother and daughter team. Judge Beryl Howell ruled that the aforementioned Giuliani was indeed liable for defaming both Freeman and Moss. In court in recent weeks, Giuliani said he could no longer contest that he made false and defamatory statements about Freeman and Moss. And the primary reason Rudy lost this case, he refused and failed to provide information sought in subpoenas. Giuliani had only turned over fewer than 200 relevant documents, one single page of communications, a few legal responses, and as Judge Howell said, and I love this, quote, a sliver of needed financial documents and blobs of indecipherable data, end quote. And this one was even better. Quote, donning a cloak of victimization may play well on a public stage to certain audiences, mega, but in a court of law, this performance has served only to subvert the normal process of discovery in a straightforward defamation case, which the concomitant necessity of repeated court intervention, end quote. Boom. Ronell Anderson Jones is a law professor at the University of Utah, as well as a First Amendment scholar. She offered this as a possible reason Rudy ignored the discovery process, as well as some other informative tidbits on this case. We'll hear the question she's asked and her response.
Rudy Giuliani, it feels like, is in the same place Fox arrived at with Dominion, where the facts are not in dispute. A jury is just going to have to decide what the appropriate damages or punishment is. Is that right?
You're right that this case is one, and in fact was among the first of the suits filed, trying to take advantage of defamation law as a tool for combating 2020 election disinformation. It means that it's been in the court for a long while, which is part of the source of the judge's frustration here. The plaintiffs in these cases have been arguing not just that these knowing lies damaged democracy as a whole, but also that they caused targeted specific damage to them, that they turned their lives upside down and were the source of pretty significant harassment, both online and in person. And you're right that there is a connection between this and the wider set of suits that are happening here. In fact, the judge in today's order makes clear that part of what she suspects might have been Giuliani's strategy in this case was to hold back on engaging in discovery in this case, hold back on providing the kind of material that he's obligated by law to provide, because he was fearful that that information might be useful to others in other suits, including prosecutors. And the judge really wasn't having it. This is a fairly scathing 57-page document in which she makes clear that when you are involved in a lawsuit, you have an obligation to provide to the other party the materials that are necessary for the litigation of that suit. And having been warned repeatedly and having been sanctioned repeatedly and having still failed to provide that material, Giuliani now faces a default judgment. He is essentially now found liable for it, and we move forward to the damages stage.
Real smart lawyering, Rudy. And I'll tell you, this could cost Rudy a bundle, and it should. The question is whether or not he'll be able to afford it. Rudy said he struggled to maintain his own access to his own electronic records, partly because of the cost. And that's why he didn't adequately respond to subpoenas for information as the case moved forward. That's okay, Rudy. Trumpy Bear will pay your expense. Oh, wait. He said he's not going to do that. So much for loyalty. But really, Rudy, what in the holy hell did you expect from a liar, grifter, and four-flusher? Did you think just because you're as bad as he is, he'd treat you differently? Foolish, sweaty, flatulent little man. And speaking of which, should I play the sound clip wherein Rudy farted on his fellow Trump attorney, Jenna Ellis? Oh, why not? It never gets old.
The answer that I gave you is they didn't bother to interview a single witness, a single witness, a single witness.
We knew you had it in you, Rudy. And I can only assume Because Rudy had no clear evidence of fraudulence, he decided to provide clear evidence of flatulence. Just a guess. Add to that, the judge also said Freeman and Moss could try to show Rudy's false claims about the 2020 election were intended, in some part, to enrich himself, and that argument may come up at the damages trial. And that's what Rudy's looking at now, not a regular trial with a verdict. In this case, the verdict is already in. The next one will be to determine damages. He's already been found liable for defamation. All that's left is to determine what it's going to cost him. I hope it's a crap ton. He's already been sanctioned almost $90,000 for Freeman and Moss's attorney's fees, as well as over $130,000 for not turning over material for discovery. And Judge Howell says the former New York mayor may be saddled with additional similar sanctions. Do the crime, pay the fine. Now, don't look now, folks, but it does seem the proverbial chickens are coming home to roost, and those who willfully and knowingly lied for Donald Trump are about to face the consequences for so doing. In short, they effed around, and now they're about to find out. Good. Lock them up. And by the way, speaking of effing around and finding out, one of the Proud Boys leader, Joe Biggs, was sentenced to 17 years in prison just this morning. That is the second longest sentence thus far. The first, Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rhodes, who got 18 years. Apparently, the number one head of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, will learn his fate on Tuesday. But back to Rudy. In his case, he is getting zero help from the Marmalade Messiah, the guy for whom he destroyed his reputation and career. And yet, what did Rudy say right after he'd been indicted in Georgia? He repeated Trump's lies, which is exactly what got him to where he's at now. We'll hear the question he's asked and his pitiable, pathetic, and of course, dishonest response.
Do you regret attaching your name to the former president?
Do I what?
Do you regret attaching your name to the former president?
I am very, very honored to be involved in this case, because this case is a fight for our way of life. This indictment is a travesty. It's an attack on not just me, not just President Trump, not just people in this indictment, some of whom I don't even know. This is an attack on the American people.
Oh, get up off your knees and wipe your chin off, Rudy. Trump's still not going to pay your bills. You are honored to be associated with Trump, and you continue to kiss his ass and call him President Trump? But he is right about some of what he said, just not in the way he meant. Yes, it is a fight for our way of life, but in the context of whether we're a country of laws and the rule of law, and if it applies to all, whether they are average Americans or Donald Trump and his co-conspirator racketeers. And the only way you can attach the word travesty to this indictment is in the context that America was stupid enough to elect a manifestly unfit, unqualified, authoritarian dictator wannabe who tried to overturn an election, and part of the process became the defaming of patriotic, innocent Americans, which you, Rudolph Giuliani, decided to partake in as well. And now you are being made to pay the price for your lies. And no, this indictment is most definitely not an attack on the American people. It was your boss and you, at your boss's behest, who attacked our electoral process in an attempt to overturn a free and fair election you knew your boy lost. That was the attack. What we are witnessing presently with Rudy Giuliani is so much deeper than your quintessential and traditional fall from grace. And I don't know if you heard this. Remember when Rudy held a press conference outside Four Seasons Total Landscaping, right in between a dildo shop and a crematorium? After the conference, Rudy experienced chest pains. He was immediately rushed to Mount Sinai Heating and Plumbing. And the reason this conference is still relevant, the Four Seasons Conference is still relevant, is because Trump's life and career, while not caught between a dildo shop and a crematorium, it is somewhere between screwed and dead. But don't worry, Rudy is prepared to fight his election fraud case all the way to the Supreme Courtyard by Marriott. Rudy's a kind of an attorney who would get a speeding ticket reduced to first-degree murder. He would get an innocent white man convicted. But at least we now know Rudy's favorite band, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons Total Landscaping. And come to think, perhaps your boss should take the Four Seasons advice. And who could forget the dripping hair dye press conference, which late-night host had a field day with?
What the hell was going on with Rudy? Honest question. Was his hair dye dripping? Was his brain shitting itself? Honestly, I didn't even know that sideburns got periods. You know your legal strategy is f***ed up when even your hair starts crying about it. It was going down both his cheeks. This dude was growing a chin-strap beard in real time.
It seems like the press conference was getting a little hot because partway through his presentation, Rudy sweat so much that his hair dye started running down his face. Either that or he had so much to drink he was sweating Merlot. Jimmy, do we have another angle on that? Remind me, is it a good sign when your lawyer starts melting? Looks like Rudy got a bad batch of Just for Henchmen. That's not just hair dye. It looks like his hair is dying. Rudy dyed his hair, but his head is challenging the results. Evidently, he had his hair styled at Jiffy Lube. Now, obviously, it's easy to make fun of Rudy here, but it's also very satisfying.
Trump, his lawyers, Rudy and his lawyers, they are all trying and lying to make this whole attempt to steal an election a First Amendment issue, which is just pants-on-head stupid. Earlier, we heard from Utah law professor Ronell Anderson-Jones, who was also a First Amendment scholar. She was asked about this ridiculous First Amendment assertion that so many defendants are trying to use. Let's hear how she responded.
What are we learning? And I know two isn't a pattern. We need one more. But what are we learning from these defamation cases about the limits of the First Amendment?
Well, I think the judge made clear in this case, and judges have made clear in other cases, including, importantly, the Fox Dominion suit, that simply wrapping up one's knowingly false statements of fact in a package of opinion is not going to be enough to claim First Amendment protection. The court in the Fox case and the court here made clear that these arguments about First Amendment protection, the sort of arguments that I was only asking questions or I was only floating political opinions, can't be invoked in a defamation case when the assertions are assertions of fact, statements that are provably true or false, that a person was engaged in election fraud, that a person was sneaking ballots in suitcases, that a person was handing a USB drive to someone else. Those are assertions of fact that are provably true or false. And Giuliani himself conceded a month ago that they were false. And so we see that there is an appeal to arguing First Amendment claims in these sorts of cases, but that also the courts are being quite critical of them when the core statements that are at issue are things that are not opinion at all, but rather are simply bold statements of falsity that the plaintiffs say they can prove the speaker knew were false at the time they said them.
Damn you, Chris Wynn. I was reading your comment. By the way, that's a quality mullet, folks. I read that as I was taking a sip of water, and you made me laugh so hard, I spit my water out on my shirt. Damn you, Chris. But kudos. That was a good one. My gal Nicole Wallace then furthered this First Amendment discussion with former right-wing propaganda hate radio host Charlie Sykes. They both made excellent points.
Charlie, there's also hollowness, right? I mean, the people clinging to the First Amendment as personal criminal defenses are the same people who didn't blink or blush when Trump described all the media as the enemy of the people. They're not actually arguing for the protection of the First Amendment in the United States of America. They're arguing for the right to knowingly lie and defame and damage, and in the case of Shea Moss and Ruby Freeman, forever alter their lives and take away forever their sense of personal security.
Yeah, Lordy, there are consequences. Rudy Giuliani is a liar and a fraud, and now he's got a court ruling that underlines this, and Ruby and Shea are able to get some justice. This reliance on the First Amendment is so deeply cynical because, of course, all acts of defamation, all acts of fraud, of conspiracy involve some sort of speech. And that speech is not protected if you are engaging in this kind of defamation. So this is an important moment. I mean, it's part of this extraordinary fall from grace of Rudy Giuliani. But it is a reminder that there are courts of law where the rules of truth and evidence are very, very different than the political world and social media. And Rudy Giuliani is finding that out, and hopefully Donald Trump will soon as well.
And that was a great point Charlie just made. All defamation cases are based on something someone said, or put another way, someone's speech. And that speech is not protected if you are using it for reasons that are criminal. And as I've said so many times, no right is absolute, not the first nor the second. But in all honesty, you don't think Trump's attorneys, such as they are, don't already know that? The question is, have they had the cojones to tell their client that? Not that it would matter. Trump's going to keep squealing First Amendment until they close the jailhouse door behind him. Lock him up. And speaking of which, Trump did an interview with Glenn Beck just yesterday. And what a kiss-ass interview it was. Listen to this clip. Listen to how Beck can't even begin a question without first kissing the orange booty.
I have to tell you, I don't know how you do it every day. I really don't. I would have lost my mind a long time ago. You said in 2016, lock her up. And then when you became president, you said, we don't do that in America. That's just not the right thing to do. That's what they're doing. Do you regret not locking her up? And if you're president again, will you lock people up?
The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us.
So, just lock people up with no trial? I mean, Trump has told us that the entire judicial system is corrupt, and every attorney general, secretary of state, prosecutor, judge, jury member, etc., are all liberals and or Trump haters. Would anybody be surprised if Trump actually tried to lock people up with no trial just out of revenge? I have no doubt whatsoever he would do that. And you know what? His brainwashed, brain-dead base would have zero problems if he indeed did so. And hey, who could forget Rudy's unforgettable appearance in the sequel to the Sacha Baron Cohen Borat film? Giuliani and a young woman posing as a reporter who was part of Cohen's sting can be seen going into a hotel for drinks. The film shows Rudy reclining on a bed and then putting his hand down his pants, moving it around for a few seconds, while the actress playing Borat's teenage daughter, who is pretending to be a television reporter, stands in front of him. The couple are eventually interrupted by Cohen, who burst into the bedroom in his Borat persona, shouting, "She's 15! She's too old for you!" Giuliani quickly sits up and appears startled by the presence of Cohen, who wears a pink outfit that resembles lingerie. Rudy asks him, "Why are you dressed like this?" Cohen, as Borat, responds, "She's my daughter. Please take me instead." To which Giuliani replied, "I don't want you." after which Rudy just hightailed it out of that hotel suite. Here's Sacha Baron Cohen in his Borat character commenting on that particular scene.
Shamash, I here to defend America's mayor, Rudolph Giuliani. What was an innocent, sexy time encounter between a consenting man and my 15-year-old daughter have been turned into something disgusting by fake news media. I warn you, anyone else try this and Rudolph will not hesitate to reach into his legal briefs and whip out his subpoenas. Dziękuję.
And Stephen Colbert, as he is wont to do, added insult to injury.
I woke up this morning more excited than I have in weeks. He said, why? Because I got a fight on my hands.
What?
And a justifiable one. We're gonna beat these fascists into the ground.
The right bite. Oh, you know what? To the astute person out there who notices my numbered cards, I think I held up the wrong one. Let's try that again. It's number 10. Stephen Colbert, huh?
It's number 12.
What's number 12?
Stephen Colbert.
Oh, Stephen Colbert is 12? Yeah. Oh, okay. Then let's try cut number 12, shall we?
By the way, my favorite law movie is the one where Borat tricks you into going to a hotel room and, let's say, pound your pants gavel. If it please the court, Your Honor, may I approach the crotch?
And when you combine that Borat story with the report from 2 days ago, wherein we learned that special counsel Jack Smith's prosecutors have questioned witnesses about Rudy's drinking habits, it is obvious what Rudy will be going out as on Halloween, hand strokers drunkula. And if Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, John Eastman, and all their RICO co-conspirators, indicted and unindicted, were on a plane that crashed, you know who would survive? America. And did you hear what Rudy said after being indicted in Georgia? Listen.
I woke up this morning more excited than I have in weeks. He said, why? Because I got a fight on my hands, and a justifiable one. We're gonna beat these fascists into the ground.
Really? You're expecting people to believe that you are excited? What, did Borat's 15-year-old daughter stop by? Listen to this unhinged tirade, also after he was indicted, but away from the cameras and inside the confines of his own home. And you tell me, does this sound like a man who is excited about being indicted on RICO charges?
What the hell is wrong with you? Racketeering. What the hell do you know about racketeering? I am the dictator. There was no fraud. What kind of lawyer are you? What kind of person are you?
Wow. Someone who was just indicted for his lies on behalf of someone who tried to overturn an election in order to stay in power like a dictator wannabe would. He thinks he has standing to call someone else a dictator? The cognitive dissonance is strong with these ass clowns, Obi-Wan. So what do you think? Did that sound like someone who's excited because they have a new fight on their hands? Sounded more to me like a guy who's wondering what it's going to be like when he's thrown in jail with the same mobsters he or someone else put away using the RICO Act. Sounds to me like a guy who's thinking soap on a rope and sleeping with one eye open. But you know, giving Rudy the benefit of the doubt, I imagine Rudy was even more excited this morning, seeing as yesterday he lost the defamation case 2 patriots brought against his sweaty, treasonous ass. While Trump, Rudy, and so many others are hiding behind the First Amendment, what they are really doing is, A, showing their continued and complete disregard for the rule of law, and B, they are trying to erode confidence in the rule of law, a critical institution for our democracy's survival. Past guest on this show, Paul Rieckhoff, founder of the Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans of America group, offered some hope concerning these attacks on our rule of law.
The war on the rule of law, I feel like we see the iceberg where it sticks out from the ocean, but we don't see all the ways that people like Rudy and Eastman, we talked about it in the last hour, and others try to manipulate the rule of law in their myriad filings, try to wear it down. And I think more than any other branch of government, the judiciary has said, no, not here.
Yeah, the judiciary is holding the line. I mean, 22 years ago, I was at ground zero when Rudy Giuliani was America's mayor. He was a role model. He was a hero. And to watch the disgusting transformation, the fall from grace, and just the meanness, the nastiness, where now he's the opposite of a role model for our children, has been stunning. It's been bad for America. It's bad for our discourse. It's bad for our children. But I think this may be the year of accountability. We may be entering an age of accountability where the rule of law still exists in America, and we can show our children and show the world that America is a place where you will be held accountable, whether you're Fox News, you're Rudy Giuliani, or you're the former president of the United States. And I think it's going to be rough. It's going to be messy. We're fighting through this terrible period, but we can finally start to see some light where our structures and our institutions and our values are holding.
You see light?
I do. I do. I think
that.
you have to, because if you don't, what have we got left? Like we had, our military held at times, our Capitol Hill police held at times, our judicial system's holding at times, and that's got to be the rebar right now for this setting concrete that's the next phase of America.
Now that was extraordinarily profound. Our judicial system is holding at times, and that's got to be the rebar for this setting concrete that's the next phase of America. Profound and eloquent and equally hopeful. The question is, do we share Paul's optimism? Do you share Paul's optimism? I, for one, very much want to. I just don't know if I'm all the way there yet. And I personally will never forget this memorable line from our current president 15 years ago.
And the irony is, Rudy Giuliani, probably the most underqualified man since George Bush to seek the presidency, is here talking about any of the people here. Rudy Giuliani. I mean, think about it. There's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. And I mean it sincerely.
One political pundit on cable news yesterday said that used to be his mantra. Now it's a noun, a verb, and First Amendment. But back to Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. In a joint statement yesterday, they said, quote, "What we went through after the 2020 election was a living nightmare. Rudy Giuliani helped unleash a wave of hatred and threats we never could have imagined. It cost us our sense of security and our freedom to go about our lives. Nothing can restore all we lost, but today's ruling is yet another neutral finding that has confirmed what we have known all along, that there was never any truth to any of these accusations about us and that we did nothing wrong. The fight to rebuild our reputations and to repair the damage to our lives is not over." End quote. In conclusion, Judge Howell said yesterday a trial to determine the amount of damages for which Giuliani will be held liable will be set for later this year or early 2024. Now, when I did my big bit on Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, I think it was 3-4 weeks ago, I also told you something that continued to confound me. Why aren't Ruby and Shay suing the Orange King of defamation himself, Donald Trump? He not only attacked Freeman mercilessly on social media, he mentioned her name 18 times, just in his now infamous phone call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and with less than zero evidence, repeated a conspiracy theory that was circulating among right-wing propaganda hate media outlets, and he called her a professional vote scammer and hustler. Here's a snippet from that traitorous phone call, and I want you to listen to Trump's tone of voice and how casually and nonchalantly he knowingly slanders and defames innocent American citizens. Lock him up.
We had at least 18,000, that's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly, 18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler. Ruby Freeman. That was the tape that's been shown all over the world that makes everybody look bad. You, me, and everybody else. Where they got number one, they said very clearly, and it's been reported that they said there was a major water main break. Everybody fled the area, and then they came back. Ruby Freeman, her daughter, and a few people. And remember, her reputation is devastating. She's known all over the internet, Brett. She's known all over. I'm telling you, where's Ruby was one of the hot items on the Ruby. They knew her. Where's Ruby? She stuffed the ballot boxes. They were stuffed like nobody's ever seen them stuffed before.
My friggin' God. She's known all over the internet. She stuffed ballot boxes. That's his blatant tell when he's lying. She stuffed the ballot boxes like no one's ever seen them stuffed before. When does this get old, Trumpers? He even tells you when he's lying. At this point, your continued support of this orange sack of tainted lunch meat, you are just embarrassing yourselves. Not to mention, you're on the complete wrong side of an issue and the wrong side of history. Because that's what cult members do. And then, when Ruby Freeman testified under oath before the January 6th committee, she mentioned both Rudy, the red-nosed panderer, and the carrot-colored clown, both by name.
I've lost my name, and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people, starting with number 45, and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
We're just going to play the tape.
There is nowhere I feel safe. Nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one, but he targeted me, a small business owner, a mother, a proud American citizen who stand up to help Fulton County run an election in the middle of the pandemic.
Well, gee, when you put it that way, he really is a certified piece of shisky, isn't he? He is just a giant pile of rancid, reeking garbage in human form. You just heard first the then so-called President of the United States dishonestly attacking an honest, patriotic, private citizen for his own political benefit. And not only that, nonchalantly not giving a good continental damn that he was doing so. You then heard some of the ramifications the person he so ruthlessly attacked had to endure. Again, under advice from the FBI, Freeman and her daughter were forced to move from their homes for their own safety because of the death threats they received because of Trump's lies. And I've asked you Trumpers this before and have yet to receive a response. I've asked you to use a modicum of intuitive common sense and tell me what you just heard from Ruby Freeman. Did that sound like a professional vote scammer and hustler? Seriously? Did you have to put her under investigation for 2.5 years to come to that conclusion? Even Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, unlike Trump, testified under oath to the J6 committee that what Trump said about Freeman and Moss wasn't true. And just to remind you, all the garbage Trump spews, none of it is under oath. 221-7283 is the number at which you can finally respond to my questions, Trumpers. That's 702-221-SAVE, as in, save our democracy from this orange, amoral, lying dictator wannabe. Let's head to the phones, and we'll start with Armando. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. I watched the poll, the debates, and I don't know who won. I don't know who lost. But like you have on your show, you go, well, you'll have an issue or two. And, I think in these debates, there should be maybe 2 or 3 issues, and then they can fight it over. The question you posed, that those poll workers that you were forced to leave their homes, that would have been a question for Bear to ask them. And then the Trump and his booking. Well, how heavy was he? Was it true? Do you people here believe that?
Well, keep in mind, Armando, they didn't weigh him at his indictment. They allowed Trump and his co-conspirator racketeers to pre-report their height and weight.
Well, that's I can't believe that.
And why they did that, I don't know. But if I had to choose between the three, a mugshot, a weigh-in, or a height check, I'd go with the mugshot. That lasts forever.
Well, that mugshot, of course, it was it was what is it? What is it? Like models, and they had their blushing and all that kind of. That's what it was.
Oh, I guarantee you, Trump spent literally hours the night before practicing what look he was going to give when he had his mugshot taken.
Yeah, but and that's the way I can't figure out why his merch is so, people on Fox, this is, what's his name or whatever there. It's great. He's defiant. He's fierce. No, it's made up. It's brushed.
Yeah.
Don't believe that.
Yeah, I hear you, Armando.
Okay.
Hey, I appreciate your call, buddy. You have yourself a good weekend.
Thank you. Am I betting? I hope so.
Yeah. Take care. And oh, shoot, I lost my train of thought. There was something Armando said I wanted to expound on, and now I forget what it was. But another question I want to ask to no one in particular, what about Donald Trump? How is it okay for this hideous and revolting orange garden gnome to lie and slander everyday patriotic innocent Americans, destroy their lives, force them to move, and face no consequences? I mean, he's going to face consequences for his attempted coup, but I'm talking direct consequences from those he slandered and whose lives he destroyed. Again, do you think he cared one tiny little bit that he redefined the phrase abused his presidential power and ruined the lives of so many innocent Americans? I mean, because of his lies and the ensuing death threat, these people had to move. Why don't you Trumpers have a problem with that? Are they just collateral damage in the war for Trump's self-importance, ego, and power? I mean, that's all he's ever cared about. Why do you care about him accruing so much power? I would love to know. 221-7283 is our caller number. That's 702-221-SAVE. Back to the phones, and we'll go to Bob. You're next. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Doug. How you doing?
Good, Bob. How are you?
Good. The other day, that dissertation on guns was right on. Totally right on. You got to ask John Lennon if he had enjoyed his evening on December 8th. How many people have died since he was murdered?
Yeah.
Guns don't kill people. Yeah, so.
Yep, just like shovels don't dig holes.
Well, you don't know my ex-wife, but that's a given. So, anyways, just lock him up. Throw away the key, and if he gets put away and they pardon him, like Nixon did Ford did to Nixon,
Yeah.
We need to stand up to everybody needs to vote blue no matter who. Just get rid of these. I hate to use the word artard, but anyways, that's what they are.
Yeah.
So you can't fix stupid, like I always say.
Let me ask you something, Bob.
Sure.
Once again today, I asked Trumpers for their opinion on how they can defend what he did to Ruby Freeman and Shea Moss. And every time I ask that question, not one Trumper will call in.
Right, because they're chickens and they can't answer a solid question.
But if that's the case, if they're chicken to call in, that would suggest they know they're on the wrong side of the issue. How then do they continue to support him when they know what he's done to innocent American citizens with his lies?
Well, I have a cousin. We were like brothers. I won't talk to him anymore because he's a Trumper. I mean, he's, I don't see what the problem is. Yeah, because you're an idiot.
Brotherly love, bro. Brotherly love.
Take it easy.
Hey, I appreciate you calling, Bob. 221-7283 is the number, area code 702. Yes, Trumpers, why don't I hear from you? I mean, you're all piss and vinegar on social media, but when you have the opportunity to actually call in and engage in a conversation and defend your orange traitor, you don't do it. And the fact that you won't call in, like I told Bob, suggests that you kind of know you're wrong and that this kind of behavior, destroying and slandering and besmirching innocent citizens with lies, you kind of know that's wrong. The question is, why don't you give a damn? This is such a blatant abuse of presidential power, going after an individual private citizen. And you're okay with that? 221-7283 is our number. Who's next, John? I blew it. Houston?
Democrat. Big bad John. Liberal Democrat.
Big Bad John, you're on the air. I blew it. I said, who's next, John, instead of who's next, Justin. I got to practice.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, no one's going to call. They don't have any arguments. They're frauds. They're nihilists. They're just they lost at the game of life, and they just want to burn everything down. I got to tell you, Doug. Yesterday, doing a little shopping, and this clown pulls into the parking lot. He's got his whole car all souped up in Trump stickers.
Oh,
and he's got a little flag, a little American flag, and he's waving it through the moonroof. All right? I like a good fight. So he parks near me, and I walk over to him, and I said, hey, can you tell me one policy that Trump enacted that benefits you? And he couldn't, he hummed and hawed, huh? And I said, you're just a three-tooth moron. And he said, what'd you call me? And as he started talking to me, guess what, Doug?
What?
He had 3 teeth. He was missing a whole 3. He had 3 teeth. It wasn't JD. I said, is your name JD? Well, I don't know. JD, after that gun conversation yesterday, I think he might have a full set of teeth. But
I know. After that conversation with JD yesterday, I'm going to have to change the song I play for him.
Yeah, he literally was missing a substantial number of teeth. Hey, these people are dangerous, man, and they must be confronted. They're planning. I listened to Mark Maron's podcast this morning, and he had an author on who wrote a book who went deep into this Trump underbelly. They're planning a revolution, man, and they have the guns. It's a very dangerous situation, and we must fight back. We must fight back hard.
Oh, I agree. Hey, John, they're playing our song. I got to run. We'll talk later, buddy.
Great show, Doug.
Hey, you take care. Hey, folks, that's it. We are almost out of time. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you calling. I just appreciate you, period. Cornball. Water all dried up from my Chris Wynn spitting episode. Damn you, Chris Wynn. Oh, I should do it over there. Damn you, Chris Wynn. No, I love Chris. He knows I'm joshing. Hey, folks, I got to run. Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro is next. As for me, I'm out of here, but we will do this all over again tomorrow, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Thursday night at 6:05